This video is going to be a full guide for how to earn and save your first $100,000 in your 20s. They say that the first $100,000 is the hardest money to make, but once you do that, you can do anything. So why listen to me? My name is Asa. I live in Puerto Rico in the Caribbean. 95% of my work is remote. I've been running my own business for 5+ years, and I've also traveled to 6+ continents, and I've been able to create a lifestyle that is fully in my control and of my own design. I've built this foundation for my life, and I want to share how you can do this as well. And I didn't just get lucky by buying Bitcoin early or something. I don't come from money. I didn't even go to college. The reality is I've been growing slowly over a long period of time and putting in that work, the growth that a tree makes that is all underneath the soil before it even breaks the surface. So in this video, not only am I going to give you a step-by-step process for how you can actually earn and save that first $100,000, but I'm also going to show you how to do that without compromising your integrity, without needing to manipulate people, and without burning out, which honestly is what I see the vast majority of guys here on YouTube and in other places doing and modeling. So if you are serious about earning hundreds of thousands of dollars in your 20s and also learning principles for life and business that are really going to serve you, things that you can actually implement right now in your life, then hit subscribe and make sure you watch this entire video so you can get the most value out of it. And thank you to everybody who is subscribing. I look forward to growing with you and being able to continue to share all of the things that I've been discovering. The first thing that we have to do is we have to look at the cycle that is absolutely going to get in the way and prevent you from being able to earn and save 6 figures. And I know this cycle because I've been there too. Most guys never had any real solid masculine role models in their life. They want to cut corners to get rich instead of building wealth with a solid foundation. They're hoping to get lucky like some of the guys they've seen on YouTube and other platforms. When it doesn't work out the first or second or third time that they try, that is their excuse to give up. That's their excuse to believe the negative doubts inside their minds and play small. And they have such negative self-talk that they end up having to escape with alcohol and weed and other vices to numb out just to feel okay. And this is where so many young men ultimately become vulnerable for all the YouTube ads and creators who are preying on you to feel bad about yourself so that they can sell you more things. So listen, bro, I want you to know that you're not alone. You're just like me and every other guy. We all have our shadows, things that we learned from others or didn't learn when we needed to, and things that are gonna get in the way of our success in life that we have to confront and show up against. And we also have gifts inside of us, gifts that are waiting for us to tap into and unleash. We just have to be reminded of them sometimes, especially in the early stages. We just need other people to remind us of it. For years after I graduated high school, I wanted to have more money so that I could do more of the things that I wanted to do when I wanted to do them. But I also felt a massive amount of pressure to prove myself to family, to other people who doubted me from my hometown, to prove myself, especially because I didn't go to college, that I was actually up to something and like having some level of success. And I also wanted to be desired by women and for girls to feel attracted to me, partially because I got a lot of validation from early relationships that I had and people who saw me in them. And then all of a sudden, there I was out in the world trying to grow my first business, and I was a nobody to women. I didn't have anything. I didn't have any status. I didn't have anything that made me really special. And in a lot of ways, I was a nobody again. I had a baby face. I didn't have any success. I didn't really know where I was going, and I didn't have a lot going for me. So a lot of us are trying to make money or get certain results, but we're doing it from the wrong place inside. We're doing it from trying to get validation. And this is what causes us to want to cut corners instead of taking the practical steps to make a lot of money, both short-term and long-term, which actually isn't that hard. So the hardest part is ultimately letting go of the things that are in the way of you actually earning that money and saving it and investing it properly. So for those of us who are going from 0 to 100K and who are not just getting lucky our first time doing so, it takes a lot of work that is going to have to happen underneath the soil. So let's be real, money does matter, but we have to get our money into alignment. And it's not everything. Because if we have money without health, if we have money but no time or freedom of our calendar or schedule, if we have money but no confidence, if we have money but we're alone, something is always missing. And there's going to be a gaping hole that is going to be leaking your money, your time, your energy, and ultimately your life force. So that precursor step is I want you to do an audit of where your energy leaks are. Where are you seeking validation? Where are your fears getting in the way of you actually just taking the steps that you absolutely can take to bring your gifts out, to bring your strengths out, and make lots of money and do it in an authentic way? Okay, so I want to hit the first step that you absolutely need to take, and that is ultimately identifying your strengths and weaknesses. You need to understand your psychology, and you need to understand where your natural abilities lie and also where your potential blind spots are. So one very practical way that I recommend doing this is taking a free online Myers-Briggs test. There's one, I'll link it down in the bio, and it works great, and it's gonna give you your profile. And if you take a little bit of time to understand your profile and the components of it, you're going to really understand better who you are with a bit of outside perspective. And so just a high level of what the Myers-Briggs does is it's going to look at, like, there's basically 4 letters that you're going to get. You're going to get one that's either E or I, and that is extroverted or introverted. Understanding, do you gain energy from being around people, or do you gain energy from being by yourself? The next one is, are you intuitive or sensory? That means, do you think more creatively and metaphorically, or do you think in a practical and more literal sense? And you'll see why this all matters in a moment. The next one is going to be F or T. And that means, do you lean more into thinking or into feeling? And which place do you make decisions from? And lastly, there is J or P, which is judgment or perception. And basically that is, again, when you're making decisions, do you make decisions by waiting to gather all of the information on something, or do you see something and you just go for it immediately? So that's a very high level overview of it. I'm sure other people could break that down even better than me, but this is going to help you really understand yourself. And this actually goes into another test that you can take. It costs money, but it's online, and you can also just understand the framework and probably learn a lot about yourself. And this is going to take understanding your basic strengths and weaknesses that like a Myers-Briggs test would do, and it's going to go to a whole other level. Because it's basically, if I can just briefly draw a chart. So this flows powerfully into the next framework called wealth dynamics. And wealth dynamics is a framework that ultimately the philosophy around wealth dynamics is helping you understand who you are and where you can bring the most value in your life to ultimately generate the most wealth. And their philosophy ultimately is that by acting in our natural abilities, we are going to tap into the flow of wealth the most powerfully. And so they have a kind of math equation that basically says wealth equals value times leverage. And I'm going to explain to you what that means. So ultimately in wealth dynamics, there is an intuitive side, which is more of that N here, or that S here, which is sensory. Then there is the extroverted side and the introverted side, which is either the E or the I here in the Myers-Briggs. And this is where it gets interesting. So the wealth dynamics framework is very fascinating. And it basically says that to tap into the flow of wealth, you need to understand your natural abilities and your natural inclinations. You need to know where you bring the most value in any organization or any business. And then you also need to know how you're naturally going to leverage value most powerfully. And this is going to help you, one, understand yourself the best, but it's also going to help you understand when you need help, when you need to bring on support in some way, or what potential business collaborations could be most valuable for you. So their framework is wealth equals value times leverage. W equals V times L. And the way that you bring value is either by being intuitive or sensory. So again, it taps into the framework from Myers-Briggs. And if you are intuitive, you're more innovative, you're more creative. And you're gonna bring value by innovating. If you are more sensory and on the kind of southern pole, in a sense, you're going to bring value by understanding like timing. So an example of this could be the real estate market. or the stock market, or anything that where you're buying low, selling high, anything where you're leveraging, anything where you're creating value by looking at a market and making strategic decisions like that, versus creating something from an idea and bringing it into reality on the creative, intuitive side of things. So that is how you are going to create value. You either are going to create value better from one way or another. Then you have to know how you leverage your value. So introverts can leverage their natural abilities best by creating systems. Extroverts can leverage their natural abilities best by interacting with people. So this is a very high level of this. We could get way more into this in another video, but ultimately, I want you to understand the core essence of this framework and understand that not everybody is created equally, in that sense that you are going to be different and you're going to operate differently. And if you can understand yourself better, you're going to understand how you can best go into any market and create abundance. Now, another key piece around strengths and weaknesses that I want to say. So a lot of people say leverage your strengths. I say become a fucking animal who is balanced, because you have strengthened your weaknesses and you've built that part of yourself up. So you're not lopsided anymore, right? You're not skipping leg day. You're training the whole body. You're working with everything that you've got. You're going to be a more powerful and effective individual like that. And what you're doing by doing this is you're actually becoming more valuable yourself. So by building up your weak areas, giving time for them too, you are becoming more valuable. You're investing in yourself, and any position that you play, whether you build your own business or work for any sort of company, you're going to be more valuable and more of an asset. So yes, you are going to make the majority of your money by leaning into your strengths, but you're going to mitigate your risks the most by strengthening your weaknesses. Tim Ferriss talks about fear setting. And fear setting is ultimately imagining all the potential worst case scenarios so that you can prepare and plan accordingly. And so risk mitigation is kind of the same exact thing. Most of the potential risks or worst case scenarios are going to exist due to some level of a weakness or blind spot that you have. And so again, by doubling down on this, you're going to create more stability in yourself and as an asset. When venture capitalists invest in a company, they're going to be looking at the CEO always. And the reason that they do that is because they know that the potential success of that company has so much to do with the person who is at the top of that company. They know that everything that's going to happen in the business is going to ultimately stem from whoever's at the top of the pyramid and who's paving the way. So leverage your strength to increase your earning potential and mitigate your risk and potential downside by strengthening your weaknesses. Learn one or more hard skills. A hard skill is what you do. A soft skill is how you do it ultimately. So yeah, for example, I got into media and marketing. So the beginning hard skills that I learned were photography and videography. And that over time built up into copywriting and web design and graphic design and social media marketing. And I've expanded my repertoire of what I'm capable of, again, to become more of an asset, and because I wanted to understand so much more than just a small lane. In some ways, by choosing to go broad, I made my earning potential in the short term slower because I was starting from basically ground zero multiple times over. But I also learned so much information about how to run a business and how to operate a media and marketing company, where then I have been able to grow a team and create systems and actually really have an information advantage on how to run things because I know the ins and outs of each step of the process, right? So there's advantage long-term. There's a time and place to go wide, and there's a time and place to go deep. And that's kind of a diamond that we have to oscillate between. There's a time and place where we want to double down, and that's where we're going to get more niched, and that's also where we're going to make more money in the short term. And then there's a time to go wide and expand our knowledge and open up to other opportunities outside of the lane that we're so focused on. And I recommend that you gain as much experience as fast as possible. I did not go to college to learn any of the skills because I didn't need to do what I wanted to try. It doesn't matter if you go to college or not. What matters is do you know a skill that there is genuine demand for? A valuable skill that you can get better at than the vast majority of people. So once you learn one or two hard skills, you need to be able to sell yourself. And so this is where sales, regardless of like what business you do, it's really important to understand the essence of sales, because that's basically the difference between a potentially broke artist and a wealthy business person. A business person knows how to sell. An artist is really gifted at what they do. And if you can actually find yourself in the middle, I think that there's so much power in that, because if you are gifted and you know how to sell and you can marry the two of them, where you can be better than the vast majority of people in your market or in your niche at this thing, and you really understand how to negotiate with somebody and how to package things and how to sell things effectively, you are going to do so well in business, and it's not going to be that hard for you to start making quite a bit of money. And when you learn how to sell authentically. There's a lot of sales advice out there that may or may not apply to you. So just take it all in, but also be willing to leave things out if it doesn't naturally flow with how you can communicate most organically. Okay, so for the next step, you absolutely need to learn essential soft skills. And with soft skills, what I'm talking about is communication. I'm talking about leadership skills. I'm talking about resourcefulness, which might be the most important soft skill that ultimately you could ever learn. And this, again, is how you show up in your work. When you have soft skills, and ultimately I think the best way that you can learn soft skills is through personal development. Developing yourself on that internal level, so that anything you work on, any job that you have, any gig that you show up for, you have just raised the common denominator. You are the common denominator of every interaction in any business that you do. And you have just raised the value of what you bring to the table, regardless of what you do, because of the way that you show up, because you have emotional intelligence, EQ, which is ultimately how you are aware of other people's emotions, how you respond and can navigate others' emotions, and how well you regulate and are able to navigate your own emotional experience. And all of that translates so powerfully into leadership skills, because ultimately leadership is vastly about being able to build trust with people so that they will listen to you, and then being able to communicate effectively with them and collaborate effectively. And you can't do that without having an understanding of who they are and their emotions and being able to navigate them, and also really being able to understand what they want in a moment and being able to communicate effectively by showing them that where you want to lead them is helping them get where they want to go to. And I talk about resourcefulness here because I think that is such a key piece. Resourcefulness is being able to find opportunity working with what you have, right? There are kids in Africa who build advanced technology with spare parts. And instead of just always needing to buy something else or have more money, it's like, how within limited resources can I create the absolute best possible thing? How can I work and find the opportunity and solve the puzzle just from what I have now without needing to gather and get anything else? So I want to invite you into that. The fourth step to earn and save 100K is this simple framework, IDI. Increase your income, decrease your expenses, invest the difference. If you can remember that simple formula, that is the ultimate, most practical advice that anybody can give you. Increase your income, decrease your expenses, invest the difference. So things that you could learn to get better at each of these three steps, right, would be first, for increasing your income, that is going to be learning more about marketing and sales. And ultimately, yes, how to sell yourself, how to sell what hard skills that you have, whether that's, right, selling yourself to a potential employer and getting out of the employee mindset and tapping into recognizing that even at an interview, you are selling yourself. And how can you sell yourself better than everybody else? By understanding, again, who you're speaking to and what they want, and being able to communicate effectively, knowing that you're speaking to them, right? Speaking their language. So understanding marketing and sales is going to help you increase your income faster. The best way to decrease your expenses and even invest the difference is by starting to track your finances. For multiple years, I used a spreadsheet and I tracked every single transaction that came in, any income that came in, any expenses that came in, and I did that manually. I didn't hire anybody to do any of that personal accounting or bookkeeping. I did it myself, and that helped me really build a really strong foundation in understanding my finances and getting comfortable with money coming in, money going out, and seeing that over time to track patterns. And nowadays I use a software called Copilot. It's about $100 a year, and that helps me see these and it saves me those hours. But if you're just starting out, I recommend you just create a spreadsheet, right? You don't need any money to create a spreadsheet and track the expenses that are coming from your credit card or your debit card and that are being taken out from your income. And lastly, one of the best ways to decrease your expenses is look at all of the potential bad habits that are costing you money. Stop buying alcohol. Stop buying so much coffee. Stop spending money on weed. All of these things are stopping you from actually being able to create the life and the business that you actually want. And they're ways of playing small, because it's not only is it time and energy being spent in a direction that is not towards your vision, you're going left instead of right, but it's also on a very practical level, oftentimes money that is going out, money that could be compounding in another direction to move you closer towards your vision and your goals. And so on this note, I want to just briefly break down the accounts that are in my bank. So I use two banks. I'm just gonna briefly visualize them. And I have an account for checking, right? I have an account for my short-term savings. That's any sort of bigger purchase that I want to make. I have an account for my long-term savings. So that's going to go into investment accounts. And that's money being set aside, moving towards each of these. And the checking account's going to take care of paying any credit cards off each month. But I always want to have these two accounts in this personal bank, right? So the next account that you absolutely need is, if you run your own business, this applies to you, is you need to have a separate bank where you have your business. So in my business bank account, I have an income account, I have an expenses account, I have a profit account, and I have a taxes account. Because when you're operating a business, you cannot just take all of that money and use it for personal expenses. You have to pay yourself out ultimately. And you have to pay yourself a percentage or a certain amount of the income that you're making, but not all of it, because you need to be setting a certain amount of money aside for taxes each year. It's highly recommended that you set aside money for profit, and that can either be reinvested in the business, or that can be, right, if you're the CEO, you can take that money at the end of the year as a bonus or be able to give bonuses to other people. Or if you need to invest in your learning, that's extra money that can be put back into the business and invested into your own business in many ways. The expenses account, again, is being used to pay off cards, to pay off any sort of business expenses, costs of goods sold, or operating expenses that you might have. And your income account is where any money is going to come in and then be distributed to these accounts or being sent directly to your checking account on a personal level to pay yourself out. So I highly recommend if you have your own business, you have to separate your business and personal. That should be a total given. And then from there, you have your personal accounting that is on one side. And then, of course, you can track your business expenses, and you want to track those separately as well, because then you're going to be able to write off things. So the next step is invest in index funds and Bitcoin. Y'all saw the disclaimer. This is not financial advice, but this is what I'm doing, investing in index funds and Bitcoin. Index funds are purchasing a small percentage of a large part of the total stock market. And so you get to have a tiny percentage of the whole stock market. And ultimately, the framework there is that over time, the market is always trending up. And so it's one of the safest investments that you can make, because over time, by leaving this long term, you are going to make money on that money that is just sitting there. That money is going to be working for you. And so index funds are highly recommended. I highly recommend you create a Vanguard account. There's other accounts that you can make, but I recommend using Vanguard, and then creating a Coinbase account to invest in Bitcoin. And of course, you need to know a little bit about crypto, but if you're not in it, there's definitely a lot of opportunity here. And this is, I think, one of the most secure. Simply the vast amount of money that is currently in the Bitcoin market makes it extremely stable. Even though it's going to be volatile and have dips, it's going to be trending up over time. So on a very simple level, that is why I recommend investing in Bitcoin. And again, index funds are going to be your most stable option. So the sixth step really ties into this, and it's ultimately how you invest it. Set it and forget it, or hodl, as the crypto people say. Set it and forget it means have it auto go into your Vanguard account, set up automatic payments from your long-term savings right into your Vanguard account, and commit to a certain amount of money to go there every single month that you don't need, that you will be able to forget and leave it there for decades without touching it a single time. And the same thing goes with Coinbase. Being able to distribute money, have it go from your long-term into your Coinbase account so you can buy Bitcoin on a regular basis. By setting it and forgetting it, it means that you're not going to emotionally make investment decisions where you're going to pull it out because you see that the market just tanked. Chances are, yeah, it might go through a bad year. There might be a year where your investment looks a lot smaller, but if you keep putting it in, if you keep buying when the market is low instead of pulling out when the market is low, you are going to be able to make so much more money on your investments, and you're not going to do the worst possible thing that you could do, which is buy high and sell low. So set it and forget it. Long-term invest only. Don't try to pull out quick and make a few bucks. It makes way more sense to invest, to let your money sit there for a long period of time and watch it go up slowly versus trying to make quick money through this. Make your money through your business. Make money through your hard skills and let your money slowly work for you and compound over time, right? This is what compound interest is. And ultimately, compound interest looks like a chart where it starts out just slow, the money is slowly increasing, but it's also compounding on itself. So that money that you have invested, that you're earning interest on over time, is slowly growing, but that $100 you put in turns into $110 that is compounding on itself, that turns into $200. And so it's growing exponentially over time. And eventually, as you put more and more in, it becomes exponential growth, right? Okay, the next step that is so absolutely essential is don't go into debt. I highly recommend you don't go into debt. This is what I did. Of course, there's tons of people who have made lots of money and they did go into debt. So if you have student loans, if you currently are in debt, it's not the end of the world, but it's not a habit that you want to continue doing. And a lot of people say, well, all the wealthiest people in the world are in debt. Yeah, but if that's not you, don't expect that you doing the exact same things that billionaires and multimillionaires are doing right now. If you do the same exact things as they are doing right now, you are in a different place than them, which means you need to play at the level that you are at. And if you play with money that you don't have consistently, you are very likely to lose money that you don't have and have to pay it back, instead of, again, letting it build over time and working within the resources that you actually have with that resourcefulness that hopefully you've been building. So again, here's what I recommend. I recommend you pay off your credit cards every single month. You have to pay your cards off every single month if you have credit cards at all. I only have a couple credit cards, and they're the ones that give me 2% back. And so yes, if I spend $10,000 on that card, I'm going to get $200 back. It's not a lot of money, but yeah, it's something worth doing. And also simultaneously, right, you're building your credit score, which is going to be helpful when you're making bigger purchases and buying a house in the future and stuff like that. So always pay off your credit cards every single month. Never carry a balance. And you only use a credit card ultimately to build your score, keep a good credit score. And you do get to a bigger scale where you're buying a house or getting a loan, you're actually going to qualify. Number 8 is master money discipline. You have to master money discipline. And really what this means to me is you need to have a budget. You need to know your budget, and you need to track that to make sure that you're actually staying within that budget. And this is not easy. This is to decrease your expenses or know your expenses. And right, like a lot of people talk about living below their means. So can you, for a period of time, right, instead of having all the nice things that your friends are buying, can you simplify? Can you be cool with less and be content with less, living simply, so that you can have more later? Right? This might sound like such a simple thing, but the vast majority of people really don't have a budget. And so what happens is they start making more money, but then lifestyle creep comes and they start spending more money along with making more money. And of course that's going to happen a bit, but if you can change that, if you can live for a period of time where your money is and your income is drastically increasing and your expenses are maintaining at the same level for a while, all of that money, that is a larger difference that can be invested, that can be forgotten about, that is massively going to compound over time. So for example, again, if you save $100,000 now and you put it all into index funds that compound annually on average of 10% a year, in 25 years, you're going to be a guaranteed millionaire without even adding any more after that $100,000. If you just left it at $100,000, that would have turned in 25 years into $1 million. And that's not even if you continued to add to it over the course of that 25 years, but if you've built the habit of starting at the $100 a month going into investments and you slowly build that number over time, over that 25 years, it's going to be vastly larger than $1 million. It's going to be multi-millions. And it's just because you did the simple practical things. It's just because you focused on your strengths, you looked at your weaknesses and you mitigated those risks, and you took these practical steps and stopped trying to cut corners. Number 9 is a bigger picture concept, and I'm going to call it knighthood. And this knighthood concept comes from a woman named Alison Armstrong, and she talks about the development of men and helps women understand men better, but also it's very helpful for men as well. And so there's basically a few stages. There's the page stage, which is basically up until puberty, as a child up until puberty, where you're basically like a wannabe knight, where ultimately you want to go out on all the adventures and slay dragons, but you're not able to yet. And then through puberty, as you become a teenager and get older and then into your 20s, you fully step out into the adventure where you're having your travels, your adventures, you're pushing your limits and seeing what you're made of. And you are, in that time, you're gaining so much experience. You're trying so many different things. And ultimately, she says that for men at this stage, the number one most important thing is ultimately the adventure itself. And after this stage is princehood. And princehood often it can happen at different ages, but oftentimes that's like 30 or 35 even. For some of us, it can happen younger, closer to 25. But princehood is when we've actually had all the adventures and it stops being as important and building our kingdom becomes the most important thing. And we realize that we want to be a king of our kingdom, but we haven't built it yet. So we're not yet that. And so the princehood phase is about that journey of building the family, building the business, building the empire or whatever it looks like for you, whatever you want your kingdom to ultimately be, and creating it over 10, 15, even 20 years. And the last phase that she talks about is being the king. And that is when we're 50 and beyond. And ultimately this phase is when we've actually built the kingdom and then we actually have time and space to enjoy it, to be more present with people. And not that we shouldn't be present in these other stages, but there's just simply more availability and we can ultimately be fully of service to everybody that is in our lives. So here we are. If you're watching this video, chances are you are not in king. Chances are, even if you are thinking about building, chances are you are still in knighthood. And even if you're considering wanting to build that kingdom, thinking about your business and stuff, you may not have fully lived out this part of your life where you're actually having your adventures, where you're having your travels, where you're maybe dating different women, where you are experiencing the world and ultimately gathering ingredients and gathering information that you're later going to be able to take to build your kingdom with. And so she talks about this because if we do not fully live out, this is a cycle. We have to complete this cycle, fully live the adventures, test, push our limits before we're going to be fully ready to prioritize building 100% over having the adventure. And we can do both at the same time, but we have to recognize what our priority is at this stage. And so for me, what that looked like is I was building a business. I was an entrepreneur through this whole stage. And also the adventure still was priority. So I made time to go live in South America, to go travel to Asia multiple times. I made time and I saved money and I did things because I knew that I didn't have the same amount of responsibilities that I will have when, like now, for example, and even in the next handful of years, stepping more into partnership and family and taking my life more seriously in those directions, right? So this is the time. If you haven't lived fully into your knighthood, this is where a lot of men end up in their 40s and then they're cheating on their partners and, having issues with infidelity or, kind of having Peter Pan syndrome where they're not ready to, they realize that they still want to live out some of these knighthood fantasies that they never fully lived because they didn't complete the cycle earlier on. So how does this all relate to earning and saving $100,000? This is so essential because this is understanding that to be able to actually save this and earn this, I want you to know that you're gonna be able to work so much harder. Once you get to princehood, you're gonna be able to make so much more money and it's going to exponentially grow what's possible if you fully embrace where you're at and stop skipping ahead. I wanted to skip ahead into princehood again and again and again, and I wasn't ready for it. And I had to keep dialing back and embracing where I was at. And also like in some ways getting it out of my system. I needed to like go out and I needed to have some of those experiences until I was like, okay, cool. I'm done with that. I'm ready to mature. I'm ready to move to the next level. And that is like a slow progression that like happens a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. So your 20s are about gaining experience and trying things. Try many things. See what you like, see what you don't like. Understand yourself. Discover yourself. And if you can do that and be resourceful to be able to earn and save money at the same time, absolutely, it's totally possible. It's exactly what I've done as well. But understand what priority is as well. And make time for these things because you're going to be able to make money in the future as well. Make and save some money now, be intelligent and smart about it, set yourself up in a powerful way, but also don't forget to live now because you might not be able to live and do the same exact things that you can get away with now when you have more responsibility later. So number 10 is your network. And I highly recommend that you invest in your network, that you make time for this. And a couple examples of this, right? I joined a personal development program that was online when I was on some of my travels, and I networked and I connected with a lot of people. And some of those people I ended up doing business with. I ended up doing business with that main person who was running the program. I ended up joining the team of a business of another guy who was massively a part. He was another coach in the program and doing a lot of work for him. And he became one of my first actually paid clients when I started doing Wayfinders Media, my media marketing business. I also, I went to other retreats to network and meet other videographers and other things. I went to another one in Mexico one time that wasn't super fruitful. It didn't really teach me much. But at the same time, I met a really good friend of mine that I ended up traveling with to Bolivia. And so like I never would have met him if I hadn't gone out and like meeting more people who are thinking similarly, who are on similar paths, who are also motivated and moving forward. You're going to meet those people. And I also ended up meeting a girlfriend of mine in Mexico, went on that trip, and we ended up dating for multiple months. And that door never would have opened if I had just stayed home. And so I say like tap into your network and invest in that and go to events and go to different things so that you can meet other people and surround yourself and by osmosis be in an environment that is going to support you in elevating to the next level. So surround yourself with people who are thinking the way that you want to think. Surround yourself with people who are already embodying what you want to embody. And you're already doing this great if you're on YouTube here watching this video. And you can get that by reading great books with great minds from many different time periods on earth, but it's so essential that you get out of the books or get off the screen and YouTube videos and actually go in person and connect with people. That is where so much growth is going to happen. And even a lot of these soft skills are going to be developed by being able to connect with people and take time to build that as well. So invest in your network. It will lead to so many opportunities that you may not be able to see now from your vantage point. So those are the 10 keys to earning and saving $100,000. I want to give you one bonus key. Your reputation is everything. You need to be absolutely unwilling to burn people to get ahead because your reputation is everything. And when people start to hear that you're cutting corners, when people start to hear that you're just making it about you trying to make some more money instead of actually genuinely being of service, it's going to start to go around. People are not going to trust you. It's also going to be like in your aura. It's going to be in your energy. And some people are going to be sensitive enough and not stupid enough to fall for it. And they're going to pick up on those subtle cues. So much of my work has come through referrals from doing really good work for people, for showing up, giving people high quality excellence, and just showing up on time, delivering what I've promised in the deadline that I've promised, and doing that over time, and people being actually happy with the outcome, which we can't always control. That's not always going to happen. But if we know that we've given 100%, then we can sleep at night knowing that we have really prioritized our reputation. So I highly recommend take that into consideration. Know that your reputation absolutely matters, and that is something that you do not want to tarnish. And this is rare nowadays. That level of customer client service is rare and makes you exceptional. So if you can do those simple things, again, you're going to be ahead of a lot of the competition. So there you have it, my bro. This is the guide to earning and saving your first $100,000 in your 20s. I hope you loved it. If you have any questions, drop a comment below. Let me know in the comments what you thought of this video. Make sure to like and subscribe if you haven't already. And I'll talk to y'all soon. Peace.